Hang on. Now I'm back. Now I'm ready. Welcome to the Writer's Life, place where you get the sights, sounds, smells, taste of my particular writer's life, and where you get the truth about the writer's life. Um, Subscribe if you haven't already. Punch the like button. Tap it. Slap it. Backhand it. Do whatever you got to do, but if you could just, that'd be great. And tap the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on one of these exciting, I don't know what they are. Anyway, I do them. So I caught the 3-hour interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That was probably a terrible Cape Cod Kennedy accent, but in my head it sounded good, so I did it anyway. But it was fascinating, whether you agree with his stance on the jabs and all that sort of stuff. Like whatever he stands for or whatever. I don't want to get into that. And this is not what I'm here to talk about. His positions, his political positions. Although I do kind of like some of them. I think he's the old Democrat, kind of Democrat, like his uncle John was. I think he's even more centered than his father was. Not that I remember his father at all. I was only 4 years old when he got killed. But his son certainly does, because he's 69 years old. He was 14 when his father died, and he was right there with him in California. And I know he's got the stance on vaccinations and all that stuff, and and he's always suing pharmaceutical companies and all that. But he seems like a genuinely honest individual. Okay, but I'm not here to promote one politician over the other. This station is not about politics. However, I do feel as though this country is in as much trouble as it's ever been, if not more. And I think there's something very seriously wrong on inside the White House and inside the swamp. Something very seriously is wrong, and that is essentially putting us all in danger, whether you want to believe it or not, because something's not right. Be that as it may, so let's get to the media side of this, because that's what I want to talk about. Back in 1960, and RFK was even noticing this. He was talking about, let me back up just a tad. Like Rogan asked him, he's like, how do you feel about the way you're getting slammed in the mainstream media? And they're writing disparaging pieces about you in the New York Times and stuff. And RFK did a funny thing. He smiled, and he started laughing a little bit. And he's like, hey, at least they're writing something about me, right? Because, that old adage about, like, even bad press is good press, right? But then he got into the weeds a little bit about it, and he said, okay, so they're not paying attention to me, like in the mainstream news. They're still a little bit obsessed with Trump, and they're pushing Biden still, even though Biden shakes hands with invisible people. And he keeps talking about, I might get in trouble for saying that. Like, why would he keep doing that? Anyway. And so he said, but let me tell you something, Joe. He said, back in 1960, my uncle recognized the potential power of a brand new media. And it was called visual medium. And it was called television. And he was a tall, handsome guy. And Jack Kennedy was genuinely, excuse me, I just had a cup of coffee. Now it's coming up on me. He was genuinely funny. If you noticed in his press conferences, like, you could tell when Jack Kennedy was going to make a joke, because he'd listen to a reporter's question, and then he'd kind of get that grin on his face, and he'd make a pretty funny joke. He was a funny guy. and I think one of our best presidents, actually. I mean, there's some pretty good evidence that like part of his campaign was bought and sold by his dad and the Chicago mob, but you know, I don't think anything's been sacred in politics for decades and decades and decades. So anyway, that's certainly true for today. But anyway, he recognized television as a powerful medium, and he looked so much better and came off so much better than Nixon did. Nixon had to learn to work television, which he did better many years later, I guess. Fast forward to 2016, okay, and then we got this guy coming down the elevator with the crazy hair and the orange face and all that sort of stuff, and it's Donald Trump. I remember I was lifting weights in the basement at the time, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is crazy. Like, it's never going to happen, right? And he gives this speech, it was a pro-America speech. It was a populist speech. But then he starts using something that no one had ever done before in terms of a political, or in terms of a presidential election. He starts using Twitter to post these bombastic short bursts that just tear his opponents to pieces. He just wrecks his opponents, just crushes them, and he wins by a big margin, I guess. Or so he still claims to this day. I don't know. But anyway, he wins. Okay, now it's 2024, almost. But the election season is heating up. We got about a year to go or something like that. A little less. A little more, rather. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, I'm going to use the power of independent media, podcasts like these, to get the word out. And then he, which is typical for this guy, he's very, very smart. He just like makes me feel like a moron. But he doesn't say anything. He doesn't state anything without mentioning several books he's read on the subject and mentioning studies he's done on the subject. And then he comes out with numbers. So at least it sounds like he knows what he's doing, right? Which is why I think this is why Biden doesn't want to debate him, because Biden's team knows that RFK will tear the old man to shreds, just crush him within the first 2 minutes. But all right, be that as it may. He said, like, okay, CNN gets something like, and my numbers might be off here. I'm not as smart as, like I said, RFK Jr. He said something like, CNN gets something like 300,000 views per night. Okay, and they're like the big guy, right? Fox when Tucker was there was getting like 4 million views. So they were doing that much better, like, exponentially better than CNN. Now Tucker's independent, right? On Twitter. Irony of ironies. And killing it there. But anyway, and he's like, and Joe, you're doing like, every time you do a podcast, you get like 40 million viewers. 40 fucking million. Can you imagine that? 40 million views. I mean, I pee myself when I get like 60 views for my videos, but I'm not Joe Rogan. And RFK was like, this is the way to go. But Joe said, like, you're going to run into trouble even with independent media, because places like YouTube, for instance, if they don't like what you're saying, they're going to dock the host of the program. They're going to dock the program's ability to monetize for that episode. And they might even delete the episode. And so, but RFK was like, you know what? I'm not here to talk about jabs or vaccines. I'm really not. I only talk about that stuff if the host wants me to talk about it. Otherwise, I just want to talk about how to rebuild America and how to how to turn things around so we're not a country of war, how to rebuild the middle class, how to stop this insane war in Ukraine, stuff, practical stuff. So anyway, I just thought it was from a media perspective. I thought that was really interesting. So here's a presidential candidate who's going to utilize independent media, the and some social media, I would imagine, right? Of course, but he's going to mainly utilize podcasts to get his word out, and he's gaining. He's totally gaining on Biden, which isn't very hard, I guess, but he's posting some very good poll numbers, and it's very early on. And the guy's got charisma. Guy's a Kennedy. So I think things are just getting started, and I think he's got a great idea. So he's got a focus podcast. We'll see where it goes. All right, that's all I got to say today. But see, you get different things here on this station. It's not just about writing and and writers and all that stuff. I want to do something different here. I want to talk about media in general sometimes, and other things too. I'm trying to do this without being overtly political. Get what I'm saying? I don't want to get into that. But I think I managed to do a pretty decent job. Let me know if I didn't. Let me know where I went wrong, if you want, in the comments. In any case, I will see you guys tomorrow, God willing. Ciao, ciao.